First Amendment to the Constitution forbids Congress from abridging your God-given natural right, your liberty to speak your mind. But should the NFL and the NBA and even Hollywood have the liberty to punish free speech? I'm PJTV's Scott Ott, joined now by Stephen Green and Bill Whittle. Well, men, when Missouri defensive back Michael Sam kissed his boyfriend on the mouth live on ESPN, Miami Dolphin Don Jones tweeted OMG, followed by the word horrible. The Dolphins have fined Jones an undisclosed amount, lectured him on the subject, and suspended him from team activities until he completes mandated sensitivity training. Jones has issued public apologies to Michael Sam and the Dolphins in words that sound about as heartfelt as a PR department and phalanx of attorneys can make them. Now, Stephen Green, the crackdown on Don Jones comes after the NBA fined and disenfranchised Don Sterling for private racial remarks he made on a bugged phone call. Isn't it good to see big businesses like these sports leagues and teams cracking down on insensitive hate speech?
How does he do it?
Yeah, boy, oh, where to begin on this? First, I'd like to say that there are plenty of things I don't want to see straight people doing on Twitter together. Let's have some moments of privacy here. But you know what? Cracking down, that's an interesting phrase, isn't it? That's cracking down. That's what totalitarian regimes do when people get uppity and start speaking their minds. That's what Dean Wormer does when he puts your fraternity on double secret probation. Cracking down is not something free people do or even can do to one another for speaking their minds. I'm actually on the side of the NFL hiring openly gay players. I think that's great. It's what's happening. It's the future. It's everybody pursuing their liberty, and I'm in favor of that. It gets complicated when it's something like a popular sport because, maybe other people don't like the gay people and they won't buy their tickets, or maybe the more left-leaning people or not racist people or just liberty-loving people don't want to see the team owners saying horrible things because that makes them like the team less. But these are all things that get decided in a free market. These aren't things that get decided by the government. These aren't things that get decided by mandatory counseling. What the hell is that? That's a jobs program for otherwise unemployable, mean-spirited, mean-hearted, small-minded bureaucrat liberals. And this stuff, we got to stop harping on each other. Come on, people. Live your lives. Enjoy your sports.
Well, Bill Whittle, let's be honest, speech has consequences. So letting companies police their own ranks is a free market solution to fight racism and homophobia that a constitutionalist like you should wholeheartedly embrace, right?
Well, Scott, precision in thinking is often our friends when we come down to being rational and logical and reasonable. So let's start at the beginning in terms of being precise about what we're talking here. The First Amendment to the Constitution protects our right to speak freely without interference on the part of the government. It does not necessarily mean that a company that employs an individual has to tolerate any kind of speech. They may not want a guy to mention the word dog. And if he says the word dog, he's fired. In my world, he has a right to be fired if the company's policy says you can't tweet the word dog. So, not that I'm equating homosexuals with dogs. I don't want to be misunderstood about this particular issue. So we're talking about First Amendment protections to the government censoring speech. With that said, what's really happening here is this. We are being told what we as Americans must believe. We're being told what racial opinions we have to have. We're being told what sexual opinions we have to have. We're being told about all the things that we're supposed to do. What we're seeing here is an extreme example. It's not any more extreme than anything these days, of political correctness. Now, I think if that player had been on any other organization than the Dolphins, he probably would have gotten away with it. The Dolphins, as you know, had an enormous scandal a year ago with the intimidation and bullying, so the Dolphins are probably the most sensitive team in the NFL right now regarding this kind of thing. I think the Dolphins have a right to basically do this since they're paying the man the money. They're a corporation. They can set whatever corporate policy they want to. But the thing I have a problem with is this. Because of this kind of intimidation, and that's what it is, it's just fascist intimidation. What political correctness ultimately is doing is saying that you are not allowed to say anything that I might find to be offensive. What I might find to be offensive, meaning me, a progressive liberal. I can say anything I want to about Tim Tebow and his Christianity. He's not protected. He doesn't have a right to be not criticized. But we determine what is offensive. And since I, as a liberal progressive, get to determine what's offensive, and you're not allowed to say that, What we have eventually done is reach the end result of what political correctness was intended for in the first place, to get people other than liberals to shut up.
Well, Steve, for many Americans, watching two men kiss each other on the mouth falls somewhere on the spectrum between merely gross and soft porn sinful. Now, doubtless some of those Americans expressed their views of Michael Sam's celebratory smooch. What can the government do to make sure that these bigots change their views or at least shut their mouths?
Oh, nothing. Not one little thing. You know, the First Amendment doesn't just give you the right to speak your mind freely. It also gives you the right. No, I'm going to go further than that. The First Amendment, it gives you the duty to be offended at the things that offend you because, well, other people have the right to say those things. Other people have the right to say those things, just like I can say what I want on this show. So can you. You know what? Let's offend some people. Let's get everything out there because the proper response to speech you don't like is more speech. It's not to shut the other guy up. We've forgotten that.
I'm sorry, I'm now being told in my IFB that Stephen Green has been fined an undisclosed amount and suspended until he completes sensitivity training. So, Bill, we'll have to carry on without him. Bill, comedian Mel Brooks made the movie Blazing Saddles 40 years ago. Now, the story includes a black sheriff, a lot of stereotypical jokes and sight gags about blacks, gays, Latinos, Arabs, Jews, women. It even uses the N-word several times. The film's being released again on Blu-ray, and this week Mel Brooks told a reporter that Blazing Saddles could not be made in today's Hollywood. Aren't you glad we put that kind of hateful, divisive entertainment behind us?
Here's what's interesting about this. When Blazing Saddles was made, it was about the same time as the Dean Martin comedy roast. We're on about the same time. All in the Family was on about the same time. And it was the willingness of people like Mel Brooks and Norman Lear, and All in the Family All in the Family changed America. That's all there is to it. And the Dean Martin roast and so on. What you had back in the mid-'70s when these films were being made, early to mid-'70s, was you had a period where people were able to have these kind of conversations and kid around and joke with each other in a way that would be considered incredibly racist today. But the great irony, and it's not an irony at all, is that the country was much, much, much happier and much more at ease with each other back when you were able to joke and kid about these kinds of things. There's no question about it. I lived through both eras. I can tell you what the relative level of tension has become because no one's allowed to be offended anymore. Now, there's a reason for this, and it's got to do with the amygdala response, and I don't have the time to get into that right now. But basically what we're doing, Scott, is by making this concerted effort to make sure that nobody gets offended, our physiological response to threats goes from being jumped on by a cougar, maybe that's time to get completely hysterical and run for your life, to somebody said something in a tweet that I may not completely agree with, therefore I'm going to get hysterical and run for my life. It's really actually changing the way we respond to threat and negative impulses, and it's a horror. So yes, the world was much, much better back in those days, and the great irony, of course, is we wouldn't have got to a world where racial understanding is improving without movies like Blazing Saddles and shows like All in the Family.
Well, the NFL, the NBA, and Hollywood studios are, as Bill suggested, all private businesses, and thus they're not bound by the First Amendment like Congress is. And businesses are sensitive to public opinion and tend to act in their own financial interest as they see it. They know that even a small protest manufactured from a spontaneous tweet can lead to big image problems, and there's no shortage of advocates and agitators eager to make a mountain out of a molehill for their own benefit. Meanwhile, the vast majority of people who were not offended by Don Jones' tweet have no financial motive to come to his defense. And that's just tough for Don Jones if he wants to keep his job. When a player signs a contract, he agrees to be bound by the rules of the team. If he doesn't like it, he can quit. So Don Jones is a free American, but he's an indentured Miami Dolphin. Nevertheless, it would have been nice to hear something like this. The Miami Dolphins organization disagrees with Don Jones' reaction on Twitter. His opinions are his own. We don't pay Mr. Jones to tweet for us. We pay him to hit people very hard and to crush the dreams of his fellow man. For Stephen Green, Bill Whittle, and the entire Trifecta crew at PJTV.com, I'm Scott Ott.